Please welcome the founder and CEO of Innovate+Educate, Jamai.
Good morning, friends and friends. We're already 5 minutes late, which is not good because I know all of you saw the agenda and said, what is she thinking? So let's get going. I want to just recognize that everybody here is a caliber of a speaker in their own right. Every single person in here is a keynote. So thank you for coming to my town, Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I grew up, left for 30 years, came back. I think about half of you have never been to New Mexico, and another half have never been to Santa Fe, which is hell. So welcome, and it's a glorious place. I'm going to change what I was going to say because of my Uber ride this morning. I do want to recognize specifically first our big sponsors, AT&T Foundation, AARP Foundation, ETS, K-12, Los Alamos National Laboratory, Samueli Foundation, Southern New Hampshire University, and Tiger Foundation, Wiley Education Services, and the Kellogg Foundation. There is no way we could do that without you guys. So thank you. Just quickly, I was in an Uber this morning with a guy named Joseph. He is from Denali, and he picked me up in my office and brought me over here. He said, what's your conference about? And I said, it's pretty much about pathways for people that have not gotten a degree. He said, that's me. And I said, well, yeah, that's most everybody, right? He said, yeah. He said, I went to Santa Fe Community College, but I couldn't finish because I have a job and a family. But then finally I went back and I took a health nurse assistant course, but it only paid me minimum wage. So I couldn't even keep up and help my family with that. So I'm driving an Uber and I'm doing really good and I'm happy because I get to support my family and I can work. And I do want to go back to college, but it's not working out for me. This whole summit is about health because that is 70% of our country and it's about 90% of our globe. We have 7 countries here with us, 530 people here with us, and I want to welcome some really good friends and amazing people to the stage. Secretary Ryan Stewart is not a good friend, but he's new and he will be my friend. Secretary of Education for New Mexico, we welcome him and we're so glad to have him in our state. Mayor Alan Weber. Alan is an old friend of mine as well, an innovator in his own mind and the mayor of our great city, and Paula Sammons, who has been a program officer at Kellogg for many, many years, and I have been honored to work with her. So they're going to open this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamai. Of course, we're now best friends. We go way back, at least to the hallway over here. So thank you, everybody, for making time to come out here. I am so excited to be able to be here. Prior to coming to Santa Fe, I was in Philadelphia running the Office of School Improvement and Innovation for one of the largest school districts in the country. So when we talk about innovating education, how it's going to propel the workforce of the future, there's no more exciting place to be in the state right now. So thank you for coming. Sorry the weather's so terrible, but hopefully you can still manage. One of the things that I've learned quickly as somebody new to the city, clearly it was built before the grid system was developed, so don't worry about finding where you are. I still haven't in my 6 weeks here. Get lost, spend lots of money in the town. I promise to make sure I use the tax revenues wisely for our kids. I don't have a ton of time because I'm pretty sure I'll get the Gong Show cane to get pulled off the stage if I start to go too long. But one of the things, when I was thinking about this conference, I was thinking back to a conversation I got to have when I was in Philadelphia, and the school district was going through this massive, almost existential crisis of budget cuts, cutting down to the bone, low morale, low achievement, and the question got asked, how can you think about innovating in times like these? And the answer, which I really respected from our superintendent at the time was, how can we not? This is the perfect time where we need to start thinking about innovation. this is the perfect time where we need to start thinking about what the pipeline looks like and how it looks differently for our kids and our workforce and our future. And this is the perfect time where we need to start coming together across sectors, across industries, bringing in our business partners, our community partners, civic partners, and philanthropies to all start thinking together what is going to be the pre-K through career pipeline that propels us, our city, our state, into the future. And those conversations start to happen right here. They start to happen at the tables, at the breakout sessions. So I am incredibly encouraged that you chose Santa Fe to have that conversation. At the Public Education Department, we are incredibly excited that we get to be a part of an administration that's going to push for bold innovations, including how we rethink our accountability and assessment systems, how we make college free for all New Mexican students, how we think about what the future is going to look like for how we integrate workforce and career and CTE and internships into our profiles for a New Mexico graduate. We have an incredible future ahead of us. We're incredibly excited that you guys are going to be partners in that. So thank you for coming. I wish you a wonderful conference, and it's wonderful to meet you all. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for choosing to be here to creatively disrupt the status quo. It's great to see you all this morning. Thank you also, Mayor Weber, and Secretary Stewart and Jamai from Innovate+Educate for hosting us in this beautiful city. I am Paula Sammons. I'm a program officer from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and we have a mission to create equitable conditions in communities so children and families can be successful in work, school, and life, regardless of race or income. New Mexico is one of our priority places, and my colleague and fellow program officer, Alvin Warren, is in the house somewhere. There he is. So this morning, I want to lift up 3 critical priorities to think about these next several days: equity, access, and family-centered employment approaches, especially for families of color that make up the largest demographic where all of these gaps exist that we're all trying to close. And in doing so, I'm going to try really hard to do the 3 B's, so be brief, be good, and be gone. While the world we live in equally distributes talent, it does not equally distribute access and opportunity. And we know that often the game is rigged with systems that discriminate and sometimes provide unfair advantage and access for some over others, especially people of color. I know that all of you are here this morning at this conference to close it, to close equity gaps, to close skills gaps, opportunity gaps, and to really shift new ways of thinking on behalf of young families. All right, so I'm going to try to do this slide. Okay. So I want to start with a slide. I love these powerful images as they really sum up much of what I want to convey this morning. So many think equality and equity are the same thing, but they are not. Equality is about treating everyone the same, but it can only work if everyone starts at the same place. And everyone needs the same supports, which we know is not the case. And equity, on the other hand, is about fairness and justice, and acknowledging that people start at very different places, and therefore need different supports to have equal access to the game. In part because of the way our systems and policies have been designed to give advantage or assess people based on labels versus competencies. So the reality, as you can see here in the third picture, is that unfortunately we have huge disparities by race and gender, especially across employment, income, savings, wealth, perpetuating intergenerational poverty. One statistics that Forbes magazine reported on was that 400 of the wealthiest billionaires had as much wealth as 16 million African American households put together, and 5 million of America's Latino population combined, and that's just unacceptable. In the fourth image you'll see here, the systemic barriers have been disrupted and removed, and the cause of the inequities have been addressed. Therefore, everyone, regardless of race, class, and gender have equitable access to the game, and liberation is achieved, and that's what we're all going after. So equity then is the result achieved when you can no longer predict advantage and disadvantage by race and gender. In 2018, the Kellogg Foundation funded the Alterum Institute to conduct a business case for racial equity, and they found that by 2050, our country stands to realize an $8 trillion gain in gross domestic product by closing the U.S. racial equity gap. And in New Mexico, it's a $93 billion gain in economic output by 2050 by closing that gap. Potential gains are significant and of great importance if we are to be competitive in a global economy, especially since more than half of the U.S. workers and consumers will be people of color by 2050. So in addition to closing the racial equity gap, we know that we need to close the skills gap and shift the way we think about talent, credentialing, and hiring. We need to increase pipelines of access for this untapped talent reservoir and make this shift, as you know, to focus on skills-based hiring, competency-based credentialing, earn-and-learn pathways, formal apprenticeships, and other innovations that rely on demonstrated performance rather than a degree proxy, signaling advancement. All the work that Jamai and her team has been spearheading and leading. And finally, if we want to break intergenerational cycles of poverty, and to be more competitive, we must also shift paradigms towards viewing workers as parents and children as our future workforce. We know that parents and children don't exist in silos, and neither can our solutions. We need to support cross-sector, family-centered approaches to employment that meet families where they're at, removing barriers, addressing trauma, providing coaching, quality child care, asset development, career pathways, well-being, and social capital. And this has been the premise of a major two-generation pilot initiative called Family-Centered Employment, launched in 2017 through a partnership between Innovate+Educate and the National Association of Workforce Boards, funded by the Kellogg Foundation to do just that. It was piloted to serve families across boards, originally in 3 local areas, so Maricopa County, Arizona, Montgomery County, Maryland, and El Paso, Texas. And in 2019, an RFP was released to expand and incorporate 12 more additional workforce boards from 10 states through launching a family-centered community of practice. So these 12 sites and the 3 are actually here in the audience, and I just want to stand and acknowledge them and congratulate them. If you could stand. In closing, I encourage all of us to prioritize and think about integrating equity, access, and family-centered approaches to employment as you do your work. You are all the courageous leaders refusing to accept the status quo, the innovators and risk takers who want to shift paradigms and create bold root cause solutions through big bets that matter, especially for young people that need you to truly see them. And finally, I want to leave you with this powerful and uplifting quote by Dr. Martin Luther King that speaks to power and justice as we're all leaders in this room. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. How you doing? Good. Can I just see a quick show of hands? Who in the audience today is not from Santa Fe? Wow! Welcome to Santa Fe. How many of you are moving to Santa Fe? Thank you very much. You're all right. Well, it is my great pleasure as Mayor of Santa Fe to welcome you here and also to introduce the first speaker in this exceptional program. The subject that's in front of us in this conference is absolutely essential, not just to the well-being of New Mexico, but to our entire country. We're at a time when education, innovation, creativity is really at the core of what we need to be about. And our first speaker is somebody who actually I've known for about a dozen years and epitomizes the knowledge, the wisdom of how to make change happen. And before I got into the mayor business, I was pretty busy in the world of management and the world of leadership, starting a magazine called Fast Company. In the past 30 years or so, there are two books that really stand out for me to talk about what management and leadership is all about. The first was Peters and Waterman, In Search of Excellence. The other was, the second was Good to Great by Jim Collins. These exceptional books essentially both say the same thing. The soft stuff is the hard stuff. If you want to have an extraordinary organization, if you want to grow for the future, you really need to learn how to attract, build, and maintain a talented team. The one person in the United States who I believe knows more about that subject than anybody else is a gentleman who I've known for more than a dozen years, who has done this kind of work in Silicon Valley and then advised people all over the world in the art of growing a talented team, a high-performing team that taps into the skills and the passions of the workforce and really makes people the center of every organization. And that person is our next speaker, my friend. You're lucky to have him here, Mr. Steve Cadigan.
Good morning, everybody. Admittedly, I feel like I'm act one of a 50-part play on the future of work today. And when I first was talking to the planners around what I was going to talk about is the future of work, and then I received the actual program a few weeks ago, and there's about 50 of you also talking about the future of work. So I feel like I am speaking to my people. Admittedly, when I hear the word employee, I'm thinking of a software engineer, because I've been working in the world of high technology. But for the last 6 years, after I retired from being a recovering human resources professional, I've had the privilege of talking to leaders and executives all over North America, all over South America, and recently a lot in Europe. And everyone's facing the same thing. We can't hire people, we can't hire the right people don't have the right skills, and that younger generation, what's the deal? They don't stick around. So I want to talk to you from my lens around the future of work, and I hope you'll find it interesting here. One of the people that I spent 5 years of my life with when I was working at LinkedIn was Reid Hoffman, the chairman and founder. And Reid was one time asked a question which his answer, I think, captures the friction that we're facing around employees and organizations in the discussion of the future of work. Reid was asked, hey, you've got this business model, LinkedIn, like, what is it? Is it a recruiting platform? Is it a subscription platform? Is it an advertising platform? What is it? And who's your biggest competitor? Who do you worry about the most? And Reid's answer was brilliant. Reid said, you know what? I worry more about the company that hasn't been invented yet than any company that's out there today. Now here's this guy who's on the board of Airbnb, the board of Microsoft, the board of Kiva, one of the most successful angel investors in the world, at the front lines of business creation in the world. And what is he saying his competition is? A company that he doesn't even know exists yet. And that's true because today, unlike at any time in history, what it takes to, the time it takes to build a new business, the money it takes to build a new business is far lower than it's ever been. So you look at all these huge organizations that are getting disrupted, these huge industries are getting taken out by companies really quickly. And that's frightening. But so how do you think about building a company when your competition doesn't exist yet? How do you think about building a company when someone could knock your paradigm tomorrow? What skills do you need? Who are the right people? This, I think, captures the essence of one of the challenges that we're all facing right now. It's a hard time. The future's more uncertain today. I was in Spain 2 weeks ago with about 50 of the top CEOs in Spain. I said, okay, how many of you CEOs, and there's about 2 women of the 50, how many of you CEOs have a 5-year plan? None. Wait a second, you don't even have a 10-year plan? You don't have a 5-year plan? No, Steve, the future's so uncertain. That's futile. Why would we do that? I said, well, how do you know what kind of people you need if you don't have a 5-year plan? Same conversation last week in San Francisco, 300 CEOs. Wow. So how do you know what kind of skills you need and what kind of organization you're going to build if you're not even thinking about that, if you're trying to survive for the present? So Alan didn't mention this book, but Built to Last is the #1 all-time selling book on leadership that's ever been published. Published in the late or sort of mid-90s. Anyone here know this book, Built to Last? Okay. Those of you that haven't read it, I'm not saying go out and buy it. Please don't take a photo. Wait for me. This book is about building a 100-year company. You want to teach people, you want to win, you got to teach people how to fish and build a 100-year company. And today I was thinking about this a few nights ago with friends over beer. I'm like, how many companies do you know today building a 100-year organization? You can come up with like 2 or 3. It's like, because things are changing so fast, I think if they published that book today, they'd change the title to this. Instead of Built to Last, is Built to Win right now. Because if I don't win right now, I gotta survive, I'm dead. I can't think about 100 years. If you don't have a 5-year plan because your competition is coming out of nowhere. This is part of why we're here, I think. This is part of the challenge. Organizations are not done. They're struggling, just like employees are struggling, to try to figure out what skills do I need to be vital for tomorrow. But if you really sit back and think about it as a professional, and I was actually thinking of delivering this presentation to you as a working professional and saying, I need to confess some things to you, it's a great time to be a knowledge worker today. I have more opportunity, wages are higher than they've ever been, unemployment's lower than it's ever been, particularly in the United States, and I have more ways to make money outside of working for the man, outside of having a job than ever before. I can see more of what's possible with my skills and what I can do than at any time in history. That's awesome. That's great. Our kids should be so pumped up. But when I look deeper and I look at the Gallup organization who's been measuring engagement for, I don't know, 50 years, and last year they said, wow, the United States had an all-time high of engagement. You know what it is? Cue the drum roll, please. 30%. What? How is it possible in an era where employees have more power, more strength, and they also have a public relations department in their pocket right here? I don't like working here. Leaders are not good. I don't like my compensation. Bad culture. Your employees know your public relations department because of this. And they have so much power. But yet we find when we do the math here, 16%, the number of people actively disengaged. Do you work with any of these people, by the way? None of you, right? Love what you do. 70% in the United States last year not digging what they're doing. Wait a second, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. Candidates and companies have more intelligence to make the best choices of where to go to work and who to hire than at any point in history. Would you agree with me? When you're looking at where to work, you have more information to choose where to go than at any time in history. Yes? Companies too, they can check us out, they can backdoor reference us. They can see where we've worked. So why, in an era where people have the most intelligence to make the best choices of where to work, is everyone so freaking miserable? Why? This is a crisis. But everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, 30% engagement. Oh yeah, we've got a, climate crisis. Oh well. We've got bad actors, prime minister, presidential roles. Oh, they're lying. So what? What's up with that? That's a problem. And so this is what I spent the last 5-6 years of my life trying to figure this out. So let's start with tenured employees. How long have people been in their jobs? Bureau of Labor Statistics says in the last 5 years, the length of time people have stayed in a company, non-farm workers, has gone from 4.7 down to about 4.2. Okay? That's not dramatic. Okay, wow. All right, but if we break this down a little bit further, we take a look at people over 50 and people between the ages of 25 and 35, we find something pretty interesting. People over 50, yeah, we're sticking around, people. Yes, we do have a mortgage and tuition payments, and it's not easy to switch jobs, and people are staying around 10 years. What do you think the number is when I'm going to put up here 25 to 35? Higher? What do you think it's going to be? 3 days? I hired that person too. Yeah, 2.8 years. What? You're leaving? We just did your orientation. What's up? Did something happen on the way to the parking lot in your desk the first day on the job? 2.8 years. Everywhere I go, every country, this is the trend. So I sat in front of the CEOs last week in San Francisco. So, no one's staying in your company longer this year than last year? That's right. So what are you doing about that? You think it's going to change? Is that a fad? Is that a trend that's going to change? They're like, we don't think it's going to change. All right, so think about it. If it's not going to change, and by the way, corporate profits are higher right now in the United States than they've ever been. So why are we fighting to keep people longer, I say? Just curious. If people are moving faster between companies than ever before, and companies are making more money, maybe there's value in bringing a new idea into your company. Maybe there's value in someone solving a problem with a different point of view than the person that's been there 20 years. I don't know. I do believe tenure builds trust. In an organization, you want to win, you got to have trusted relationships. That's a good thing. But that is something that we should be paying attention to. It's really interesting. If I were to define the future work from my point of view, this is the picture that describes it all to me. How many of you ride a scooter? How many of you have an injury, workplace injury on the way to work today? Yeah. This is Bird. This company has existed for all of 25 months. It's the fastest company to reach $1 billion unicorn status of any company since we've been measuring these unicorns. They do not have a recruiting problem at all. In the last year, this industry has gone from probably about 1,000 employees to 50,000 to 100,000 overnight. They don't have a recruiting problem. They should have a recruiting problem. Can any leader in this industry, scooter industry, say, oh yeah, we've been in this industry for 10 years. We know what we're doing. We know where it's going. No, you don't. The industry didn't exist, and you have no experience in it. And does anyone who goes to work for the scooter industry think in 10 years we're going to be riding scooters? Really? We're going to be hanging on to those Amazon drones flying everywhere? I don't know. But it's probably not going to exist. And by the way, if you look at any of the business plans, they're not planning to make a profit for 10 years. So why are people running to be working in the scooter industry? The answer, I think, sort of defines where we are with the future work from my perspective. People are running here because even if the company fails, I learned how to do something new. I learned how to build a new business. And in an era where I can't trust going to work for GE, who, by the way, lost $800 billion in the last 20 years, the biggest nosedive of corporate performance in the history of America. And prior to that, every business book written in the late 90s and early 2000s always referenced GE, great leadership. Well, they just did a face plant. So if that's not a safe place to go to work, what is? Scooter company. Oh yeah. Yeah, but they're not going to make money and leadership doesn't know what they're doing. And the product's not going to be around. Yeah, well, that's where I want to go. Wow. That's fascinating. That's a future work right there. Because learning is going to make them more vital for tomorrow. If I learn how to build a new business or I'm part of a team that's building something new in a new industry, I'm infinitely valuable tomorrow no matter what happens wherever I go. My industry gets disrupted, so what? I learned how to build a scooter business, baby. Fascinating to me, fascinating. So people are sitting here right now and they're terrified. I believe we have a student generation and a workforce right now, it's like freaking out. So I hear executives say, oh, those millennials. I go, first off, I don't like generational categorization. What do you mean millennials? They said, well, there's not loyal. Look, they don't even stick around. I said, you're willing to tell me 30 years ago, if you had infinite choice like they had today, you'd still be working in the same place for 30 years? And by the way, those millennials are your kids. You raised them. Yeah. We don't have a millennial generation problem. We have a problem we've created, which is things are changing faster than our ability to keep up. The skills we need in businesses today are happening and needed faster than our ability to grow those skills. We can't forecast. So how do we build inventory if we don't know where it's going? This is the problem. What does a career mean today? Talk to my kids about this. Dad, I want to be a YouTuber. Want to be a YouTuber? That's kind of lame. No, Dad, check it out. If we create good content that's valuable for people, people will watch our videos, we'll make money. I go, that's a beautiful lesson. Create content that matters, you're going to be successful. But my kids don't know, should I be a generalist? Should I be a specialist? What should I expect from a company today? I asked those same executives in Spain and San Francisco the last few weeks, any of you promising a job more than 5 years? No. I asked employees, if anyone promised you a job guarantee for more than 5 years, would you believe them? No. So what's the deal? The deal is we don't have a new deal yet. And it's changed so fast. But here's an opportunity if you're an organization. We need to think differently about this. And there's some organizations that are actually doing some different things about it. This slide right here, and even if you don't believe this data, if you believe 20% is accurate, if you believe 30% is accurate, it's still kind of shocking data. That in the next 10 years, 80% of the jobs out there don't even exist today. I don't know if I buy that. By the way, there's a whole session, I think, this morning, this afternoon, around this topic. Check it out. This is frightening. This is not making me confident if I'm a student or a professional today. What? So what is that? What am I going to be doing then? What's my job going to be called? John Seeley Brown, former CEO of a company that in its era was cooler than Apple and Google and Facebook combined. Xerox. Anyone remember Xerox? Oh yeah. When your company becomes a verb, man, you know you've made it. I'm going to Xerox that. He's dedicated his life to education. He says today, this is also part of why everyone's freaking out, I think, the life of a skill that you can use to make a living is about 5 or 10 years. What? Used to be 50. That's a problem. Wait, what? Yeah. Now that's not true in every profession, it's not true in every sector. But if that is true, or even if it's 10, 15 years, wow. I can't just finish my undergrad and then cruise. Whoa. That's why we have an explosion of online universities, nanodegrees, singularity, Udacity, boom, boom, boom. Amazing. So the biggest challenge for business today is that the pace of change at work is exceeding our ability to be able to scale up the skills that we need. Simple problem, but it's a massive problem. So what are we going to do about all this stuff? If you're in the business and your people are leaving faster, you have a choice. Am I going to try to keep people? Or am I going to recognize they're going to leave and maybe I should build a new model? And by the way, the whole consulting industry is built on come here and we're going to help you leave. Fascinating. Spotify. They institutionalize you cannot be in your job more than 2 years. Now again, for the engineers in the room, that's not everyone. The CEO's not going to change jobs every 2 years. But that is an interesting model. Okay, last 2 slides here. I believe today, the people I talk to, is that don't fight for a job, fight to be employable. Employability is the new job security. Don't fight to have that job. Fight to be vital for tomorrow. That's what I think we're going to discover today and tomorrow, is how to do that. And lastly, this is my favorite recruiting slogan. And I tell this to companies in Silicon Valley, they look at me like, what? We're paying you how much to tell us this, Steve? Yeah, my new recruiting slogan is this. You ready for it? You guys sitting down, buckled up? Stay here because I'm going to help you leave. Yeah. Come here, and not literally I'm going to help you leave, but I'm going to make you better for tomorrow. If you come work for me, no matter how long it is, I'm going to make you better. So regardless of what happens in this business, regardless of what happens outside, you're going to be okay. And interestingly enough, today, and this is where another head explosion for businesses. What you can know as a candidate today is more important, I believe, than what you know. What your learning velocity is more important than what you knew. Because we know what you're going to be doing, or what our business is going to be doing is going to be different. All right, have I inspired you? Yeah? You ready? All right, let's go solve this problem together. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everybody. I'm Silverman, and lucky for you, I'm 36, so I'm going to be here for at least 30 more seconds. I have the privilege of serving as your MC today on behalf of my colleagues at Whiteboard Advisors. Some of you may know Whiteboard. We have been longtime friends and collaborators of Innovate+Educate and the CLOSEITsummit. I will keep it brief, but I just want to say I'm already inspired, and I hope that you are as well. I have the privilege of introducing someone who probably doesn't need any introduction at all, Ken Eisner. Ken is the leader of, I don't know his real title, he's just a really great guy. He's the leader of worldwide education programs Amazon Web Services. You can read about his bio in your app, and I encourage you, by the way, to take a look at speaker bios throughout the day to learn more about the people who will be speaking to you.
Amazon has a history of sort of thinking big. We had Amazon.com, Prime, Alexa, Amazon Web Services. We've also had some gigantic fails. If we follow Steve's advice and have people traveling around hanging on to drones, we might have our next. But does anybody have a fire drone? Anybody? Giant fail, right? We have to figure out how to fail forward on that. We've used mistakes made in that for Alexa and other devices, and we had to reward our people who took risks, who took innovation, and put them in areas of exceeding decision-making, exceeding responsibility. So when we think big, we think about failing fast. We think about failing forward. We think about the need case and areas that we need to disrupt. We think about scale, and we try to look around the corner. So when we think about learning, the future of learning we see as definitely being career-aligned. For too long, vocational learning and liberal learning have been separated. It's created battle lines between ivory towers and career and technical academies, and it's created divisions between industry and academia. We need to bridge that gap. So we developed AWS+Educate as part of that bridge to work very heavily with education to be career-aligned. Quick background on Amazon Web Services, or AWS. We started in 2006, devised the cloud. Since then, it's been scaled. We're the fastest company to ever hit a $10 billion yearly run rate. It's now a $33 billion yearly run rate and growing at a startup-like clip of 37%. What's the big deal? It's a giant job opportunity. Cloud computing has been the #1 LinkedIn skill for the past 4 years in a row. Artificial intelligence clocked in at #2 this past year. AWS Search Pay at the top of the market. But as Steve mentioned, we can't recruit people at nearly the pace needed. Glassdoor ran a stat a few years back for companies on their platform between 2009 and 2015. The time to hire increased by 80%. Imagine that. Imagine companies like us that need builders in order to innovate. Imagine all the excess recruiting costs. And most importantly, imagine all those people who are left out of the opportunity. So we created AWS+Educate to try to develop that link. It's a free program for students and educators around the world. It provides free access to content, professional development, free access to AWS, and so on. To back this, and this is the real framework from a careers perspective, we created the Cloud Competency Framework. We searched internally with our HR team, with partners and customers and third parties, and developed the 28 most in-demand jobs in the cloud. They fit into 4 different areas: software development, data, including machine learning, cloud architecture, and then operational areas like cybersecurity, cloud support engineer, things that are often middle skill. Then develop the level 1 through 3 knowledge, skills, and abilities. They serve as a backbone for everything that we do at scale with educational institutions and around. Students age 14 and older can enroll, do a cloud career pathway as long as they're 14 and older, do a badge in IoT, machine learning, and so on. And then there's a payoff. We launched the McGovern job board of Amazon customer and partner jobs. Students can search through thousands of jobs and internships. Recruiters can search students from among the many students who are on there to find skills that match to them. And then we launched something that I think is pretty cool called the Interview Accelerator, which says if you do these tasks in school, online, we're going to put you first in the line for interviews. So the true payoff, the true relevance in terms of careers. So the program's been scaling hundreds of thousands of students, over 10,000 educators, over 2,400 institutions around the world, 2,200 countries, all the top 10 leading global computer science institutes. But what we really saw that we think is cool is community colleges. We started in Los Angeles with the LA High Tech Consortium of 8 LA area community colleges, Los Angeles Unified School District, government entities, and they applied for $15 million in California Career Pathway Trust Grant. Tech pathways for students in grades 9 through 14 in industry. They received the grant, all going well, but then we decided that kind of wanted to throw a bomb in the room. Say, it's cool, it's working, but can we go faster? Can we go bigger? Santa Monica College and their awesome chair of the computer science department, Howard Stahl, said, I want to do that too. So we worked together, did instructional design sessions, professional development, and so on. And they developed a 4-course, now 5-course sequence in cloud computing. They launched it as dual enrollment with Roosevelt High School, both majority-minority, largely Hispanic institutions. And the success rates were awesome. They filled up the first cohort in a day, the second one in a day or two. They had new teachers to teach more, break completion rates, passing AWS certification, interns, and jobs. And that led to 18 more colleges and high schools joining to form the California Cloud Workforce Project. And it's scaling. Went from 80 students with Santa Monica to over 300 in a year, over 2,000 with 5 schools starting today. And they're all sharing their curriculum. So this is leading to an explosion of this cloud degree program. We have, last year, Northern Virginia Community College launched the first associate degree. George Mason launched the first bachelor's degree. The Bay Area Consortium took the Los Angeles work. International, they took the curriculum, the work that was being done, and launched in the UK and Bahrain. With, again, community colleges at the center, which is phenomenal because we see that dual enrollment, early college between high schools, we see the transfer and matriculation with 4 years, we see direct into and out of industry, they move statewide or system-wide, and they attack a diverse audience that generally doesn't enter into the tech industry. And now it's starting to get cooler. So Louisiana launched the first statewide across their entire Louisiana community technical college system. The University of Louisiana system, K-12, came when Governor Bell Edwards said we're going to do cloud education for our students. Virginia, Texas, we have over 700,000 students in their community college system. Hundreds of thousands in the Dallas, Irving, and Houston systems that said they go to this, along with Texas State University system. HBCU's doing it. In Virginia, President of Virginia Tech, Tim Sands, said he sees this as an inflection point in higher education and in education in general. The amount of sharing, the amount of collaboration, education moving at speed and at scale like we've never seen before. So there's other things that we see in the future of learning. Without a doubt, and this is nothing new, but the hands-on piece is absolutely vital. Amazon doesn't hire people without that hands-on experience. We don't hire purely theoretical workers, and neither do our customers and partners. This is another piece of the relevance. While we've got career readiness, we've also got the need to be hands-on and make it relevant for kids inside of the classroom. We're doing this with partners now, First Robotics, Project Blivin. I love the way robotics actually changes a mindset of a kid when they come in and they see their stuff being built. The future of learning also relies on new competencies. There's a lot of talk about how quickly things will become outdated. Competencies will not become outdated quickly. And skills and data proficiency can be taught to be expandable and last the age of time. You're teaching an individual, programming language, no, the computational thinking, yes, but it does rely on new competencies in addition to the 21st century competencies. At Amazon, we have 14 leadership principles. They guide the way we interview, they guide the way we assess people, and they are completely prevalent throughout every day. Does education really address all of these? So first of all, dealing with ambiguity. Candidates for interviews often come to me and say, what's your average day like? And I immediately know that they haven't studied Amazon. Things change at rapid rate. Industries change. You heard the presentation before. Businesses change. Jobs change. Decisions change at light speed. Every day is completely unique. Are we preparing kids to deal with this massive level of ambiguity? Are we marching them towards terminal exams, terminal degrees, terminal ends of their education, where we're not preparing them for this new world? Are we teaching kids a test-dev mindset? Are we teaching them that failure is good and that iterating and inventing and taking risks are positive? Are we teaching people to go as quick as possible? At Amazon, we need speed. We want people to go as fast as humanly possible through two-way doors where decisions are reversible. Are we teaching people in education to really move fast and to understand the difference between a two-way door and a one-way door where the risks are high? And are we really enabling that think big creativity and innovation? So the future of learning is also lifelong. I hear this a lot, but I often see it as being lip service. If we are marching kids to be students until they graduate, and then they transfer into industry, when we know students are really taking different paths, we're forcing them down one perspective, and then when you're a student, you're learning. When you go into industry, you're getting trained. Are we really okaying that perspective? Now, I'm not saying Peter Thiel was right in paying people to forsake college, but the notion of blending these work and education experiences seamlessly is incredibly important. Yet how does education get there? Absolutely through modularity and stackability. Super important principle. We can't be so degree-centric that we're not enabling this modularity of education. Adapting quickly. Should education be adapting to the latest and greatest thing that happens in the scooter industry or whatever? No. But there's a lot of big things that are happening. Data is completely changed. We've moved into unstructured, streaming data, and yet we're still teaching people the basics of algebra and moving them into calculus. Do we need to be more statistics and data science centric? On and off ramps, constant on and off ramps between education and industry to blend that work and learning experience. And lastly, the future of learning needs to be owned by the individual, empowering the individual across their journey. This does get to data ownership needing to be in the hands of the individual. It also gets to an individual constantly be serving up educational experiences, whether they're in education, whether they're in work, those to be assessed, those to be tracked and kept, and then future education served, individualized education served against that, and education to be always available. And lastly, we all need to be forever students. There is a constant learning pace. If we're talking about things, skills changing constantly, And yet, again, we stop education at a certain point. And then, some people go back to it. Education and industry not working together seamlessly, we're never going to be able to achieve that because we really do all need to be learners forever. Thank you very much.
Please welcome our next speaker, Vice President of Enterprise Learning Solutions for Wiley Education Services, Jamai Walsh.
Good morning. I feel like I'm being announced to the WWF. That's awesome. So my name is Jamai Walsh. I work at Wiley, where I have the privilege of working with organizations each and every day to prepare future-ready workforces. And this morning I've got to admit to you that I'm an 80s child. I'm the millennial that we often talk about. I'm a fan of the 80s, and the 80s were special because they were a simpler time. And some of you here this morning might be saying, well, Jeremy, I've been working hard to repress everything about the 80s, and now you're going to bring it up. Don't worry, I only have 9 minutes, so we'll go quickly. But the 80s were a very simple time, a time when we didn't have the skills gap, per se, a time when this was maybe the truest test of a person's aptitude. I've been thinking about bringing this back into our hiring process just to test people out, see if they're going to fit the role okay. This was the truest test. If you could figure out the Rubik's Cube, you were instantly deemed a neighborhood genius. The 80s were also a time of wonderful fashion accessories like this, the fashion accessory of the slap bracelet. I know some of you are still carrying around your special slap bracelets today. I think this was the genesis of Pandora bracelets. If you weren't into fashion, how about the mixtape? It was an art. It was half art, half skill. The mixtape, and not everyone could get it just right. I explained to my children the other day how the mixtape worked, and they just don't even understand the concept of a tape recorder. They looked at me and said, "You're weird, Dad." If you weren't into music, you weren't into fashion, maybe you're a sneakerhead, and maybe you remember these beauties. With the simple push of a pump, your vertical jump was sure to increase at least 3 feet. It was incredible. And of course, the 80s were all about this guy, Michael Jordan, and that's why we wanted to all jump higher. And really the only skills gap of the 80s was really every NBA team chasing after this guy, trying to win their NBA championship while this guy was dominating. If you're not into sports, then, maybe you're a movie buff. There were a lot of great movies in the 80s, and we all certainly will know this intergalactic cult classic hit. What am I talking about? That's right, Star Wars. Star Wars is maybe one of the best 80s movies or series of 80s movies that came out in that time. It's certainly the only one that has had the staying power to build an entire franchise. Now Disney's got whole entire theme parks around it. And so, obviously, I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. I've even got my Star Wars watch on today. I'm a huge fan of the 80s, and that's why I was super excited when, about 3 years ago, Netflix brought everything that was great about the 80s rushing back into pulp culture with their Netflix original hit series. Anyone know? Stranger Things. That's right, Stranger Things. So you might be wondering, Jeremy, isn't this a close it conversation about closing the skills gap and about the future of education and the future of work? Why in the heck are we talking about the 80s? Well, honestly, I just like the 80s, so I'm sorry. In reality, though, I believe that the 80s has a lot to do with the way that we've been trained to think about this concept of the skills gap. It's really influenced the way that we've acted and behaved over the last 20 years. I believe that, at least in my opinion, that Star Wars and Stranger Things actually sums up part of the behavior that we've been acting on for quite some time that's gotten us into this predicament. You see, we're living now in a Spotify world, but many people still have mixtape skills. And we haven't changed the narrative of how we're going to tackle this problem. And it all started, at least in my opinion, way back in 1997. And that was the same year that Reed Hastings launched Netflix. Thank God for 1997. But it also happened to be the same year that McKinsey launched their first research report, where the author, for the first time, mentioned a specific phrase called the war for talent. And the idea was that we were in such demand of knowledge workers that there was going to be a downward pressure and a huge competition to get the type of talent we need. And so the war for talent was born, and I actually like to refer to it as War for Stars, or Star Wars, if you get my joke today. And so we all went to work really hard, spending lots of money on recruiting, on staffing, investing in bigger offices, fancier titles, better benefits, anything we could do, pulling out every trick to get our hands on the talent that we wanted to get our hands on. Because we were told that it's a war for talent, and in wars there's winners and there's losers, and in most cases there's casualties, and it was a zero-sum game, so we went to war, and this is what we believe that we were doing. And for the last 20 years, many of us have woken up thinking that this is the world we live in, that there is some sort of battle going on for talent. But what if we were tricked? What if it was all a lie? What if that really isn't the case that we're living in today? And after all, why wouldn't we believe that we're living in a war? After all, today we are living in a time of unprecedented change where technology is kind of engulfing everything that we do. And the pace of technology change is touching each and every organization. Digital transformation, something that every organization and CTO is like, we got to do that. Digital fluency is something that every single position in our organizations today needs to have some level of digital fluency. We talk about AI, it's no longer a thing of the future, it's a thing of today, and we're going to see that more and more take over and be a part of everyone's jobs. We think about soft skills such as agility, learning agility, and adaptability, and creativity, and we realize we don't have enough of those. And so, of course, it feels like we're in a war. Maybe it's the fact that 7.2 million people, 7.2 million jobs have gone unfilled for the last many months because we can't seem to find the talent to fill it. Maybe it's the fact that 6 million people are unemployed looking for jobs because they can't find the skills that they need to take these types of jobs. Or maybe if you're a CEO in the room today, maybe it's your fault. After all, CEOs are saying that finding the top talent is their number one initiative, and 40% of them say that they're concerned because they can't find the talent they need. Or if you're an HR leader in the room, maybe it's your fault. Because in our latest Closing the Skills Gap report that Wiley released last month, 64% of HR leaders, that's actually needs to be inverse, 64% of HR leaders said that they can't find the talent they need, that there's a skills gap in their organization, and that it is making it difficult to compete, and most importantly, if this isn't war, I don't know what is, it's making it a downward negative impact on profitability. All that while stranger things are also happening in our world. Stranger things like us deploying the same strategy over and over, getting the same result, and looking at each other like, why did that not work? Things like hiring talent, losing talent, hiring talent, losing talent, the same cycle. Things that are very strange, like 41.4 million people voluntarily left their job. These are people that we want to stay employed at our organizations. 41.4 million of them left their job this year. That's almost, for perspective, a third of the full-time workforce in the United States. Leaving their job when we want to keep them. The number one reason they're leaving their job is because they want opportunity to grow, to learn new skills, to develop, to take on something new. What's stranger is that $617 billion is what this country spends in annual turnover. That number is expected to go to $800 billion in the next 4 years. Very strange. And then you contrast that with the strange thing of $87 billion being spent across training, upskilling, reskilling, all the institutional investment that our companies are making and taking individuals to the next level. And that's $6 billion less than we spent the year before. So we're spending less on the things that employees want to keep them around longer. Very strange. So in reality, it's no wonder that when you look at all these dynamics, of course we feel like we're fighting a war. Of course we feel like there is a war on talent. But what if for a moment we reframe the way that we're thinking about this? What if it's not really this dark and gloomy? Instead, it's a little more like Disney. And the future is a future of collaboration, of cooperation. If you've seen the movie A Beautiful Mind about the gentleman named John Nash, he even introduced the term co-opetition, where competitors look at ways to cooperate. And they do this around cogs and widgets and all kinds of stuff. But why do we not do it around talent? I believe that the future does look more like this. It looks like AT&T and their Future Ready program, where they helped over 100,000 employees upskill who were going to be out of work if they continued down the path that they were. Where they spent $1 billion and collaborated with Coursera, Udacity, and a bunch of university partners who made internal investments around career centers, all to help their workforce become future ready. Or maybe it's the things that we just heard from Ken at Amazon and the great work they're doing in their Upskilling 2025 program and launching Machine Learning University and in making all kinds of investments to make not just their workforce, but the entire workforce of this nation and the world more ready for jobs and careers in the future. Maybe it's Walmart and their Live Better You program that they launched last year in collaboration with several universities focused on helping their associates get earn certificates and degrees and skills in medicine and in machine learning and many other in-demand skills. And they've already had 7,500 employees or associates take advantage and begin their degree program. This one is near and dear to my heart. I was involved with this one. Liberty Mutual started a program called Go for Code, where they help hundreds of non-technical workers at their company move into technical jobs and become Java coders. And it saved the company millions of dollars in recruiting costs, but more importantly, it retained hundreds of years of institutional knowledge. It's been a huge success in their partnership with the Software Bureau. And then one of my favorites is the Grow with Google program, where they launched their certificate in IT specialist. And so far they've had 85,000 individuals take advantage of this certificate in partnership with Coursera, in partnership with several community colleges, and they also built a job network with hundreds of employers where you can get you can earn a job after earning your certificate specialist, IT specialist. Now, what's interesting is if you check out the Grow with Google program, it tells a story about a lady named Melinda who was a hairstylist in a small city that had a huge downsizing because the manufacturing plant closed. She was a fan of the 80s and she needed to reskill. She jumped right into this program. She found a new livelihood, and that's the opportunity that I believe the future holds. And when we begin to collaborate together, we begin to work together, interesting things can really happen. And so I want to leave you with a question. What can we do over the next 2 days, collaborating, communicating? How can we contribute? There's hundreds of organizations represented here today, and I believe that there's many, many great ideas for us to tackle and begin to pursue. There's not a silver bullet. No one has the answer, but we need to create what that looks like. And so I want to leave you with this thought. Wiley, this is my quick plug. Wiley has been around for over 200 years. When you talk about companies that haven't lasted long, we're not one of those. We've been helping companies and individuals transform and navigate these types of transformations for over 200 years. And so we're interested in working and partnering and collaborating with organizations like yours. And if there's an opportunity that you see for us to help you or for us to work together to do something unique, I would love to do that. Lastly, you can access our full Closing the Skills Gap report at skills.wiley.com. It's available for everyone here today. And I want to leave you with a famous 80s quote. If you're a Back to the Future fan, you'll know this quote from Doc. And he said, "Marty, the future is what you make it, so make it a great one." Let's make it a great one over the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Dr. Angela Jackson is a partner at New Profit, a venture philanthropy, it's easy for me to say, firm where she leads the future of work strategy and investments. Angela Jackson. Sorry.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Angela Jackson. I lead the future of work investments and strategies for New Profit, which is a venture philanthropy firm based in Back Bay, Boston. Before I get started today, I want to make sure that we're all awake. And I'd like to ask you a question, it's yes or no. And if you could just humor me by answering out loud, I'd greatly appreciate it. Can everybody learn?
Yes.
Everybody?
Yes.
Are there any people who can't learn? No. Does our society truly believe that everyone can learn? The reason why I ask this question is because in my work, I regularly read headlines like this. What is the best age to start a business? Or I'll read a headline like this one. Silicon Valley has an age problem. And reading these headlines makes me wonder if we really believe that everyone, young, old, rich, poor, well-educated or not, can really learn. Go with me for just a second. I'm wondering, how would our workforce and education systems really work if we thought that everyone could learn? More specifically, how would we hire? How would we promote? How would we retain employees if we truly believed that everyone was capable of learning? That was one of the questions we've been asking ourselves at New Profit. We were founded over 20 years ago, and our founder, Vanessa Kirsch, her mission was to break down barriers between Americans and their dreams, to close that gap. So about 3 years ago, we began thinking about the future of work. We began thinking about what part that we could play. We began thinking about who was being left out of the future of work. So we began talking to employers, asking them about how they were spending their time, where they were spending their dollars. We wanted to find out what skills and mindsets would be most important in the future of work. When I think about this work, it's personal. When I was showing you the pictures to assess whether everybody could learn, the last picture was an elderly couple, African-American couple, which were my grandparents, and this is them, George and Fanny. When I think about the future of work, I think about my grandfather. He worked at a local factory in Racine, Wisconsin for his entire career. When I think about the learning systems and the professional development he got, it was really to keep him more efficient at his current job. It wasn't about upward mobility. It wasn't about a career path. Despite that fact, he worked and retired from that Chrysler factory. And I'm proud to say that he produced a great legacy. He was able to raise a family, and as you can see here, helped put me through college. And I am humbled and I'm proud to say I stand before you today with my doctorate from Harvard University because of that man. I get a bit emotional because when we talk about the future of work, many times it's an upmarket conversation. We talk about how we're going to upskill people who are already highly skilled. But when we're talking about closing the skill gap, we talk about the over 6 million jobs that are going unfilled, we have to think about who are the people who are we missing? Who are the people that we're not talking about? People are saying that the American dream is slipping out of reach. Some people have said it's already slipped out of reach. When we look at millennials, we're looking at the first generation that will fare worse economically than their parents. The American dream that I grew up believing, the American dream that we all are so proud of, how do we begin thinking about how we afford that to more people? I believe, and I'm sure many of you in this room, that our country depends on it. So we began asking employers, what were the skills that were most important? We decided that we wanted to take an ecosystem approach. So with our partners, Strata Education Network, Walmart Stores, Blooming Adventures, the Beacon Fund, the Siegel Family Endowment, we began going out to employers, asking them to join us, asking them how we could invest as a philanthropy to make sure that there's going to be access and opportunity in the future of work for everyone. What we found out from employers was very interesting. A couple of things. When we found out where employers are spending their professional development dollars, 80% plus were going to middle skill and higher skilled workers. So we began thinking about that. If only 20% is going to entry-level workers, who's thinking about them? Who's helping them to prepare for the future of work? And with our partners, we thought this is a position that we could play. When we asked employers about the impending automation and how it was going to be seismic shifts in automation that would really make things even more unequal, they told us that even though automation is coming, that there will still need to be humans behind machines driving them. They told us that although they each had a set of hard skills that was individual for their organizations, that there were a set of skills, which we call human skills, that were the same across all of these employers. And so we heard of some of those earlier today. Empathy, teamwork, agility, computational thinking. So we're thinking, if you're employed now, where can you learn those skills? So what we decided with our partners was that we wanted to be bold. We invest in workforce, but we also wanted to invest in innovation targeting entry-level workers. So we decided that we're issuing an X Prize challenge. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with X Prize. This is the CEO, Peter Diamandis, but he's a futurist of sorts. And he talks about that we've been talking about the future of work for years now, but the future of work is actually here, and this is something that we need to solve in the next 5 years. So what we've decided to do with X Prize, if you don't know them, they are credited with launching the private space market. They took a $10 million challenge, issued it to the world to send the first privately funded rocket to space. So what started as a $10 million investment spawned $2 billion in investments in a private space market that exists today. So with our partners, we thought, could we use the same innovation around the future of work, targeting towards entry-level workers? And what we've decided to do with a Future of Work X Prize is that we want to incentivize employers, technologists, and innovators coming from cutting-edge education industries like gaming, AI, behavioral psychology, to come up with solutions that we can give to workers on the front line so that they can learn on the job where they are. So our Future of Work X Prize is going to be an experiment. We're working with Marriott International. We expect when we launch in November of 2019 that we will have over 100 to 150 teams compete. These teams will develop on-the-job training targeting entry-level Marriott workers that they can learn while they're doing their job. They don't have to do it before work or after work. They can get paid while they're doing it. The teams that we will select that will receive a $6 million grant will be the ones that show the most promise and outcomes for entry-level workers. What we're hoping to do is to catalyze a market for on-the-job skills training for entry-level workers. What we're hoping to do is to shed a light that entry-level workers also need attention and also deserve to be upskilled. And that's one thing that we want to talk about at this conference today. When we think about our advisors, and this is our network of folks that we're working with, they keep telling us that innovation is needed. And when we think of ourselves as a philanthropy, we think that's where our dollars should be spent, on risk capital. So we're working with Anders Ericsson, we're working with Boris Saxberg at CZI, and the name that I'm most proud of is William Julius Wilson, and if you haven't heard him, just retired from Harvard University. He's a sociologist that wrote the book When Work Disappears. He said that innovation is most necessary for entry-level workers because those are the people that are most forgotten about. So when we think about our goals, this goes back. Our goal is to upskill millions of entry-level workers. We want to prove to the market and to employers that there's a return on investment in investing in entry-level workers. We want to prove that there's a scalable way using technology to upskill workers. We want to find out the skill sets and the mindsets that are most important to the future of work and most relevant to employee outcomes. And we want to use the data that is coming out of the X Prize to inform research that will inform new products. So I know that I asked you, in the beginning, if everyone could learn. What I wanted to say is that this is going to take an ecosystem effort and us all working together. So as I am going to be going through the halls with you and going to different sessions today, there's a few questions I ask you. Who are the innovators that we should also be talking about? Who's thinking about this issue? I know that Jamai said there's several countries and several states in the room today. Who are the people that we should be talking to? Who are the partners who are thinking about funding differently? Who are the innovators who are thinking about upskilling at scale? And how can researchers, as researchers in the room, how can we use this information to better collaborate with employers, with universities, to know what mindsets work best? And I know when I started, I asked the question if everyone could learn. And I know in our heart that we all truly believe that everyone can learn. But the real question will be is we will push our markets, our systems, our employers, our educators to act accordingly. I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to do one thing before we get learning sessions. I want to recognize that we have an amazing marketplace. Please stop by, learn about what's there. The learning sessions were a little over time, so let's try to get back here at 10:30 for a great panel with Tiger Foundation and Notre Dame Foundation, which is going to be awesome. But just for 1 minute, I want everyone to know that the land that we're sitting on, close of 2019, takes place in the traditional, ancestral, and sacred land of the Tewa people, especially the people of Tusuki Pueblo. Since time immemorial, they have called this area home, near city on their land. We acknowledge their strong and enduring historical and cultural relationship to this place. Yesterday was New Mexico's Indigenous Day, which many states are doing that. We were surrounded by amazing tribal land and communities, and we are really honored to be here, so thank you. Please go to the learning session. We'll see you back here at 10:30.